Before I tell you this story, I need to know something. Have you ever heard your name called from water when no one else was around? Maybe you were at a lake or the ocean or standing near a creek, and you swore someone said your name from the water itself. Drop a comment and let me know, because I need to understand if this happens to other people or if it's something specific to certain places. And if this is your first time hearing about what really happens in America's largest subtropical wilderness, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you think about the Everglades forever. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm a park ranger at Everglades National Park in South Florida. The drive from Miami to the Flamingo Ranger Station takes about 2 hours if you don't stop, longer if you actually pay attention to the landscape transforming around you. I'd made this drive 1,000 times as a kid, riding in the back of my dad's truck while he pointed out alligators and roseate spoonbills, teaching me and my sister Maya the difference between sawgrass and cattails, between the dry season and the wet. But I hadn't made this drive in 8 years. Not since I left for Seattle the day after my college graduation, convinced that the Pacific Northwest offered everything South Florida didn't. Clean air, mountains, a city that felt alive and modern instead of humid and ancient. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. The sawgrass prairies stretched endlessly on both sides of the road, that particular shade of yellow-green that only exists in the Everglades. The sky was enormous and empty, that washed-out blue you get in subtropical climates, where the humidity is so thick it turns the air itself into something visible. It was early September, the wet season, and the water was high. I could see it gleaming between the grass stems, dark and still, reflecting nothing. My hands were tight on the steering wheel. I'd been gripping it like that for the past hour, knuckles white, shoulders tense. I kept thinking about the last conversation I'd had with Maya, 2 months and 4 days ago. She'd called me at 11 at night Seattle time, which meant 2 in the morning her time, and her voice had been wrong. Strained, frightened. "Sarah, I need to tell you something about the backcountry patrols," she'd said, "about what I've been seeing out there. I tried talking to Chief Webb, but he just showed me the protocols and told me to follow them. But Sarah, the protocols don't make sense unless you believe, and I'm starting to believe, and that's what scares me." I'd been half asleep, annoyed at being woken up. "Maya, you're not making sense. What protocols? What are you seeing?" "I'll explain when you visit next month. Just, if anything happens to me, promise you'll come back. Promise you'll finish what I started. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're being paranoid." She'd laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, maybe. Love you, Sarah." 3 days later, they found her ranger boat drifting near Whitewater Bay. Engine still running, radio still on, her hat floating in the water 20 feet away. No signs of struggle, no blood, no body. Just Maya's boat, empty, in the middle of 6 miles of mangrove channels and shallow bays where the water is dark as coffee and you can't see what's underneath. The official report called it a presumed drowning, likely caused by falling overboard in rough water. Never mind that the water had been calm that day. Never mind that Maya had grown up on these waters, could read currents and tides like other people read traffic lights. Never mind that she was wearing her life vest when she went out, and the life vest was still in the boat when they found it, carefully folded on the seat. The Flamingo Ranger Station appeared ahead, a cluster of low buildings with metal roofs that gleamed in the afternoon sun. I pulled into the parking lot and sat there for a moment, engine running, AC blasting, trying to remember how to breathe normally. The humidity hit me the second I opened the door, wrapping around me like something physical. Seattle had been 68 degrees when I left. This was 94 with 87% humidity, the kind of heat that makes your lungs work harder just to pull in oxygen. Chief Ranger Marcus Webb was waiting on the station porch, exactly as he'd been waiting on that same porch when I was 16 and applying for my first summer job as a volunteer. He was maybe 58 now, with iron gray hair and the deep tan of someone who'd spent 30 years working outdoors in subtropical sun. His uniform was crisp despite the heat, his boots polished, his ranger badge catching the light. "Sarah," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was firm but careful, like he was afraid I might break. "I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry about Maya." "Thank you, Chief." "It's Marcus now. We don't stand on formality much out here." He gestured for me to follow him inside. The station was blessedly cool, the AC working overtime against the heat. "I've got your orientation materials ready, your housing assignment, your patrol schedule. You'll be partnered with Tommy Osceola for the first few weeks while you get reacquainted with the park. He's good people. Mikosuke grew up on tribal lands just north of here. Knows these wetlands better than anyone except maybe the old-timers." We walked through the main office, past desks covered with maps and patrol logs and visitor incident reports. On the far wall, I saw something that made me stop. A framed document, old and yellowed, with text that had been typed on an actual typewriter. The frame itself looked like it had been replaced multiple times over the years, but the document inside was original. "What's that?" I asked. Marcus followed my gaze. "The protocols, written by Chief Ranger James Whitmore in 1983, before my time, but everyone who works backcountry in this park memorizes them." I walked closer and read the text. Everglades National Park Backcountry Protocols. These protocols are based on documented incidents spanning 40 years of park operations. They are not suggestions. They are not superstitions. They are survival instructions. Violation of these protocols has resulted in disappearances, injuries, and deaths. All backcountry rangers are required to follow them without exception. 1. Never investigate distress calls alone after sunset. Always call for backup and wait, even if the caller claims immediate danger. 2. If you observe a person standing motionless in water deeper than 3 feet, do not approach. Mark the location with GPS, return to station, and report immediately. 3. Items found floating against the current must not be touched or retrieved. Mark and report only. 4. If your boat engine dies in the same location 3 times within a 24-hour period, abandon the vessel immediately and request aerial extraction. 5. Whistling or singing heard from multiple directions simultaneously requires immediate evacuation to the nearest station or safe zone. Do not attempt to locate the source. 6. During new moon phases, Loop Road and Turner River backcountry areas are restricted to daylight patrols only. No exceptions. 7. If you hear your name called from the mangroves or open water, do not respond or acknowledge. It is never who you think it is. Return to your vessel or station immediately. I read it twice, then looked at Marcus. This is serious. These are official park protocols. As official as anything we have. I know they sound like folklore, like something from a campfire story. But Sarah, they're in place because rangers died. Multiple rangers, over multiple decades. We stopped losing people when we started following the protocols. But these don't make sense. Objects floating against the current, that could be debris caught in an eddy or wind pushing things upstream. And hearing your name called, that's probably just other people in the park or birds or something else. Marcus's expression was grave. Your sister said the exact same thing when I showed her these 3 years ago. She thought they were superstition, traditional knowledge dressed up as policy to make the Miccosukee Rangers feel included. She was wrong. A chill ran down my spine despite the air conditioning. Did Maya break one of these protocols? Is that what happened to her? I don't know. She wouldn't tell me what she was investigating, just that she'd found something in the Turner River area that didn't match any known wildlife patterns. She went out alone during new moon, which violated Protocol 6. We found her boat the next morning. Before I could respond, the door opened and a younger ranger walked in. He was maybe 26, with dark hair pulled back in a short ponytail, brown skin that spoke of Miccosukee heritage, and the kind of lean build you got from spending your life walking through wetlands and hauling equipment. His uniform was worn but clean, his boots caked with dried mud that he was carefully wiping on the entrance mat. "Tommy," Marcus said, "this is Sarah Chen. Sarah, this is Officer Tommy Osceola. He'll be your partner." Tommy's handshake was firm, his eyes assessing me in that way people do when they're trying to figure out if you'll be reliable in a crisis. "Heard a lot about you," he said. "Maya talked about her big sister who went to Seattle and became a big city park ranger. She was proud of you." My throat tightened. "Thank you. I'm sorry about what happened. Maya was good people. Best backcountry ranger I ever worked with." He glanced at Marcus, then back to me. "Chief tell you about the protocols yet?" "Just finished reading them. They're unusual. That's one word for it." Tommy pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, then handed it to me. "Took these myself, about 4 months ago, near the Shark Valley Slough. Was following up on a report of unusual tracks near the water. The photo showed a section of muddy ground near the water's edge. I could see footprints clearly, human footprints, bare feet with normal toes and normal spacing. The prints walked in a straight line toward the water, but as I swiped to the next photo, then the next, I watched the prints change. The foot became slightly longer. The toes started to spread wider. The arch flattened. By the 5th photo, the prints were no longer quite human. The toes were webbed, elongated, with too many joints visible in the mud. The spacing between steps had lengthened impossibly, and by the final photo, the prints had transformed into something else entirely, something with 6 digits instead of 5, with webbing that extended halfway up each digit, with claw marks at the tips. "What is this?" I asked, my voice steady despite my heart hammering. "Digital manipulation? Some kind of joke?" "No joke. I followed those prints for about 50 yards. Started human, ended something else. The prints just walked into the water and didn't come back out." Tommy took his phone back. "I know what you're thinking. I thought the same thing when I first saw transforming tracks. Thought somebody was messing with me, playing a prank on the new guy. But I've seen them 6 times now, always in the backcountry, always during new moon phases. And Sarah, Maya photographed the same kind of tracks. She sent them to me a week before she disappeared." The air in the station suddenly felt colder. "You think whatever made those tracks, you think it had something to do with Maya?" "I think Maya was investigating something that the protocols warn us about. I think she got too close. And I think whatever she found is still out there." Tommy's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I know you came back to find answers about your sister. That's natural. That's what I'd do. But you need to understand something first. The protocols exist because there are things in this park that don't fit into normal wildlife biology. Things that have been here longer than the Miccosukee, longer than the Calusa, maybe longer than humans altogether. Your sister forgot that. Don't make the same mistake." Marcus cleared his throat. "Sarah, Your housing assignment is cabin 7, the one on the north end near the mangroves. It's the same cabin Maya was using. I can assign you somewhere else if you'd prefer." "No, that's fine. I want to be where she was." "All right. Tommy will show you over there, help you get settled. You start patrol tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. We'll keep it simple for the first few days, just familiarization runs, checking on campsites and monitoring water levels. Nothing too strenuous while you readjust to the climate." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The flight from Seattle, the drive from Miami, the weight of being back in the place where Maya had lived and worked and vanished. It was all catching up to me. Cabin 7 was a small concrete block structure painted white, with a metal roof and screened windows designed to catch any breeze that might cut through the humidity. It sat at the edge of the ranger housing area, separated from the other cabins by maybe 30 yards, with a dense wall of mangroves starting just 20 feet from the back porch. Tommy helped me carry my bags inside, showed me how the AC unit worked, pointed out the radio I should keep on at all times for emergency communications. "Lock your doors at night," he said as he was leaving. "And Sarah, if you hear anything calling your name from the mangroves after dark, don't answer. Don't even acknowledge it. That's Protocol 7, and it's the most important one." "Why? What would happen if I answered?" "I don't know. Nobody who's answered has come back to tell us." He left me alone in Maya's cabin, surrounded by her things. The Park Service hadn't cleaned it out yet, waiting for me to arrive and decide what to keep, what to donate, what to ship back to our parents in Miami. Her books were still on the shelves, field guides to Florida wildlife, books on wetland ecology, a worn copy of Peter Matheson's The Snow Leopard that she'd read a dozen times. Her photos covered one wall, pictures of sunset over Florida Bay, of alligators and herons, of the sawgrass prairies turning gold in dry season light. And on her desk, I found her journal. I opened it to the last entry, dated 2 days before she disappeared. The handwriting was Maya's, but rushed, almost frantic. The tracks again, 3rd time this week, same location, Turner River Chickee area. Transforming over approximately 50 yards, human to something else. Collected plaster casts, but they degraded overnight. Turned to powder. Dr. Marsh says he's seen this before. Says there are things in the deep glades that predate modern taxonomy. Says the Miccosukee have stories about the marsh walker, about something that wears human shape but isn't human, that calls to people with familiar voices. I think I heard it last night. I think it used Dad's voice. I think it knows my name. I sat on the edge of her bed, holding the journal, staring at words that should have been impossible, but somehow weren't. The sun was setting outside, the light turning orange and red over the mangroves. I could hear birds calling, fish jumping in the nearby channels, the distant rumble of an airboat somewhere on Florida Bay. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Then, as darkness fell and the last light faded from the sky, I heard something else. Sarah. My sister's voice, calling from the mangroves behind the cabin, clear as day, unmistakable. "Sarah, I'm lost. I'm so lost. Please help me. Please come find me." I stood up, my hand reaching for the back door before my conscious mind even registered what I was doing. Every instinct screamed at me to go to her, to help her, to find my sister who was lost and scared and calling for me. Then I remembered Protocol 7. If you hear your name called from the mangroves or open water, do not respond or acknowledge. It is never who you think it is. I stood frozen in the middle of the cabin, my hand on the door handle, listening to my dead sister's voice begging me to come outside, to come into the darkness, to come to the water. and I realized that Tommy and Marcus and the protocols were right about everything. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on Maya's bed with every light in the cabin blazing, my service radio on my lap, listening to my sister's voice call my name from the mangroves for 6 hours straight. Sometimes she sounded scared. Sometimes she sounded angry. Sometimes she sounded exactly like she had when we were kids, laughing and calling me to come play hide and seek in the mangroves behind our parents' house. "Sarah, please. I'm so cold. The water is so cold, and I can't find my way back. Please help me." I didn't answer. I didn't even look toward the windows. I just sat there, gripping the radio, reminding myself over and over that Maya was dead, that whatever was outside wearing her voice was not my sister, that Protocol 7 existed for exactly this reason. Around 4 in the morning, my phone rang. "Tommy, you okay?" he asked without preamble. "How did you know?" "Because it's your first night, and you're in Maya's cabin, and if that thing didn't come for you, I'd be surprised. You following Protocol 7? Yes? Good. Keep following it. It'll stop at dawn. It always stops at dawn." He was right. At 5:47 a.m., as the first gray light started filtering through the mangroves, the voice stopped mid-sentence. The silence that followed was so complete it made my ears ring. I waited another 30 minutes before I finally stood up, my legs cramping from sitting still for so long, and walked to the back window. The glass was covered in handprints, dozens of them, pressed against the screen from outside, overlapping and smearing like someone had been frantically pawing at the window for hours. But the prints were wrong. The palms were human, the throttle wide, and we raced back through the mangrove channels, the whistling fading behind us, but never quite disappearing until we were 2 miles away and back in open water. "What the hell was that?" I demanded, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "That was why we follow the protocols. That was why your sister is dead." Tommy's voice was shaking. "Radio dispatch. Tell them we have a deceased person at the Marsh residence and that we need CSI, FBI, and we need to contact the Miccosukee Tribal Council. This isn't just a death. This is something else." I made the call, my voice somehow steady despite my hands shaking. As I reported our findings, I kept thinking about those 3 figures moving across the water, about the symbols carved into the mangrove roots, about the coral circle that looked like something from a ritual that predated modern religion. And I kept thinking about Maya's journal entry. Dr. Marsh says there are things in the deep glades that predate modern taxonomy. We made it back to Flamingo by 10 a.m. Chief Marcus Webb was waiting on the dock with 2 FBI agents I'd never seen before. Tommy and I gave our statements, showed our photos and video, described what we'd found and what we'd seen. The FBI agents looked skeptical until they saw the photos of the carved symbols and the coral circle. Then they looked disturbed. "We'll send a team out to process the scene," the lead agent said. "But we're going to wait until full daylight tomorrow. Nobody goes to that island after 3 p.m. Understood?" That night, I went back to Maya's cabin with 2 additional radios, a spotlight, and Tommy's personal phone number on speed dial. I triple-checked the locks on the doors and windows. I kept every light on, and I waited. The voices started at 8:47 p.m. First Maya again, calling from the mangroves, then my father's voice, even though he'd died 5 years ago in a car accident, then my mother, who died in the same crash, then my grandmother, dead for 10 years. They took turns, sometimes overlapping, sometimes arguing with each other about who should call to me next. "Sarah, sweetie, it's Mom. Please come outside. We miss you so much." Dad's here too. We're all here waiting for you. Sarah Chen, this is your father. I need you to come out here right now. Don't make me come in there. Sarah, it's Maya. I'm not dead. I'm alive. I've been alive this whole time, but I'm trapped and I need your help. Please, you're my sister. You have to help me. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, as far from the windows as I could get, and I didn't answer. I didn't speak. I didn't even cry, though I wanted to. I just sat there following Protocol 7 while the voices of everyone I'd ever loved begged and pleaded and threatened from the darkness outside. At dawn, they stopped. I forced myself to stand up and look at the windows. More handprints, but this time they covered every single pane of glass. Human palms with webbed. Officer Osceola, I understand this area has cultural significance to the Miccosukee people, and I respect that. But we need to focus on evidence-based investigation, not folklore. Then explain the tracks. Tommy pulled out his phone, showed her the transformation photos. Explain what Sarah and I saw yesterday at Dr. Marsh's property. Explain the whistling from 3 different directions simultaneously. Explain how something left handprints with webbed fingers on Sarah's windows last night. Staged evidence, hoax, someone trying to scare us away from the real investigation. Marcus cleared his throat. Agent Diaz, with respect, I've been chief ranger of this park for 12 years. Before that, I worked here for 18 more. I've seen things in the backcountry that don't fit into your evidence-based framework. The protocols exist because we lost people, good people, when we tried to apply conventional law enforcement thinking to unconventional situations. Chief Webb, are you seriously suggesting we're dealing with something supernatural? I'm suggesting we're dealing with something we don't understand, and that dismissing the possibility that it's not human is dangerous. Marcus looked at me. Sarah, I think it's time you met someone who might be able to explain what your sister was investigating before she died. We drove another 20 miles north to the Miccosukee Reservation, leaving Agent Diaz and her team to their evidence boards and conventional theories. The landscape changed as we drove, the sawgrass prairies giving way to tree islands, and then to developed tribal land. Tommy navigated dirt roads that weren't on any official map, eventually pulling up to a traditional Chickie dwelling, an open-sided structure with a thatched roof and a raised platform floor. An elderly man sat on the platform, working on what looked like a basket woven from sweet grass. He was maybe 89 or 90, with long white hair tied back and traditional clothing, a patterned shirt and dark pants, with multiple strands of beaded necklaces. His face was deeply lined, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Joseph, Marcus said respectfully, thank you for seeing us. Elder Joseph Cypress looked at me for a long moment, his gaze seeming to see past my ranger uniform and my skeptical expression straight into something deeper. Your Evening Heron's granddaughter, he said in English with a slight accent. You have her eyes, her cheekbones, her spirit. I don't know anyone named Evening Heron. Your grandmother, before she married your Chinese grandfather and took his name. Before she left the tribe and moved to Miami, she was called Evening Heron, and she was Panther Clan, same as me. She had the gift, the ability to walk between the physical world and the spirit world. That gift doesn't die just because you deny it. It passes down through blood. I looked at Marcus and Tommy, confused. My grandmother's name was Helen Chen. She worked as a nurse in Miami. She never mentioned being Miccosukee. Because she chose a different path, Elder Joseph said gently. She chose to marry outside the tribe, to raise her children in the city, to let the old ways fade. That was her choice. But blood doesn't forget, Sarah Chen. The land doesn't forget. You carry Evening Heron's gift, whether you acknowledge it or not. That's why the Marsh Walker is so interested in you. The Marsh Walker? Elder Joseph gestured for us to sit on the platform with him. Up close, I could see that the basket he was weaving had symbols worked into the pattern, similar to the symbols carved into the mangrove roots at Dr. Marsh's property. The entity you've encountered has many names, he said. The Mikosuki call it the Marsh Walker. The Calusa who lived here before us called it something else, a word lost to time. It existed before human beings came to these wetlands. It existed when all of South Florida was underwater, when the land was still forming from the sea. It's old, Sarah. Older than our stories can measure. And it's hungry. Hungry for what? For the lost. For the grieving. For people who come to the water carrying sorrow or searching for something they've lost. It feeds on those emotions, uses them as hooks to pull people deeper. And once it has you, it wears your voice like a mask, uses you to call others. Your sister Maya, it has her now. It uses her voice to call you because it knows you're grieving, knows you came back here searching for answers about her death. The humidity pressed down on us, thick and heavy. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear water moving through a channel, the sound constant and patient. How do we stop it? Tommy asked. You can't stop it. It's part of this land, as fundamental as the water and the sawgrass. But you can contain it, maintain boundaries, keep it from expanding its hunting ground. Elder Joseph set down his basket and stood, moving with surprising grace for someone his age. Come inside. I'll show you. We followed him into a small, concrete block house behind the chickee. The interior was dim and cool, smelling of tobacco and sage smoke. One wall was covered with objects, bundles of dried herbs, carved wooden figures, stones with symbols painted on them, and photographs, dozens of them, showing the Everglades at different times and seasons. Elder Joseph pulled out a map, old and hand-drawn, showing the Everglades in far more detail than any official Park Service map. Certain areas were marked with symbols in red ink. These are the old places, he said. The places where the barrier between worlds is thin, where the marsh walker can cross over most easily. Turner River, here. The deep channels of Whitewater Bay, here. Certain tree islands in Shark Valley. The Loop Road corridor. Your Park Service knows about these places, even if they don't admit it. That's why the protocols restrict access during new moon, when the barriers are thinnest. Dr. Marsh was offering, and this, he unwrapped the bundle to show me a small carved bead made from cypress wood, covered in tiny symbols. A boundary marker. Wear it always. It won't stop the marsh walker, but it will slow it down, give you time to think and act instead of just reacting in fear. I took the bundle, surprised by how warm it felt, like it had been sitting in sunlight even though we were indoors. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Accepting this means accepting responsibility. It means learning the boundary songs, the protection ceremonies, the old ways that your grandmother abandoned. It means walking between the world you know and the world that existed before human beings tried to map and control everything. I'll learn. Just tell me what to do. For the next week, I lived 2 lives. During the day, I was Ranger Sarah Chen, working with Tommy and the FBI to investigate Dr. Marsh's death and track down Derek Webb and his accomplices. At night, I went to Elder Joseph's chickee and learned things that had no place in my Park Service training manual. He taught me songs in Miccosukee and Creek, phrases that were supposed to maintain boundaries between the human world and the old places. He taught me how to read the water, how to tell when something was wrong, just by the way birds fell silent or fish stopped jumping. He taught me about offerings, how to give tobacco to the 4 directions, how to ask permission before entering certain areas. "The land is alive," he said one evening as we sat watching the sun set over the sawgrass. "Not metaphorically, literally. It remembers everything that's happened here, everyone who's lived and died here. The marsh walker is part of that memory, part of that living consciousness. You can't fight it with guns or laws. You can only maintain the boundaries with respect and ceremony." The investigation was making progress too, though not the kind Agent Diaz wanted. Tommy and I found Derek's illegal campsite deep in the Turner River mangroves, accessible only by small boat through channels barely wider than the boat itself. The site was hidden under a dense canopy of mangroves, invisible from the air. What we found there made my skin crawl. A workspace had been set up on a small island, just a few feet above the high water mark. Grinding stones with residue that looked like crushed coral and shell. Mason jars filled with swamp water mixed with something dark that I really hoped wasn't blood, but probably was. The same symbols carved into every available surface. Cypress knees, mangrove roots, even carved into the trunks of small trees. And in a waterproof container, we found Dr. Marsh's research notes. Pages and pages describing the marsh walker, its feeding patterns, its ability to mimic voices, the rituals required to summon it. The notes were clinical at first, scientific, but toward the end they became frantic, frightened. The last entry was dated 2 days before Dr. Marsh died. Derek and the others have gone too far. They're not trying to study the entity anymore. They're trying to serve it. They want to feed it more victims in exchange for some kind of power or knowledge I don't fully understand. I told them I was done, that I wouldn't help them anymore. Derek said it was too late, that they'd already offered me to it. Said my death would be the first, that Maya Chen would be the second, and that Sarah Chen would be the third. 3 offerings to open the door fully, to let the marshwalker expand beyond its traditional hunting grounds. I have to warn someone, but who would believe me? I was photographing the notes when I heard it, whistling from the south, then from the north, then from the west. "Tommy, we need to go. Protocol 5. But before we could get back to the boat, a figure emerged from the water 20 feet away, not walking through it, but rising from it, water streaming off him like he'd been submerged completely and just decided to stand up. Derek Webb, but changed. His skin had a greenish-gray tint in the dappled sunlight filtering through the mangroves. His eyes reflected light wrong, showing an inner shine that wasn't quite human. When he smiled, his teeth seemed too sharp, too numerous. "Sarah Chen," he said, and his voice had that same multi-layered quality I'd heard from the thing using Maya's voice. "You're learning the old ways. That's good. That makes you valuable. Your sister Maya learned them too, eventually. She understood what Dr. Marsh was trying to do, understood the beauty of surrendering to something older and greater than human civilization." "Where's Vanessa?" Tommy had his hand on his service weapon, though we both knew bullets wouldn't help here. "Where's Cole?" "Watching, waiting. The new moon is in 3 days, Sarah. That's when we complete the ceremony. 3 offerings to open the door permanently. Dr. Marsh was the first, willing or not. Maya was the second, and she was so beautiful when she went into the water, so frightened and so alive. And you. He took a step closer, water still streaming from his clothes. You'll be the third, the bloodline offering, the granddaughter of Evening Heron, completing the circle your grandmother started when she abandoned her responsibilities. I'm not going anywhere with you. Derek laughed, and the sound echoed wrong, bouncing off the mangroves in ways that violated acoustic physics. You don't have a choice. The Marshwalker knows your name, knows your voice, knows everything you love and everything you've lost. Maya's voice is the sweetest. Did you know that? She calls every night now, begging you to come to the water. And eventually you will, because that's what grief does. It pulls you toward the lost ones, even when you know they're gone forever. He dropped back into the water without a splash, just sinking down until the dark surface closed over his head. We ran back to the boat, Tommy starting the engine with shaking hands. As we raced back through the channels toward safety, I touched the cypress bead hanging around my neck, feeling its warmth through my shirt. 3 days until the new moon. 3 days to figure out how to stop this before I became the third offering. 3 days to save myself and everyone else the Marshwalker was hunting. Agent Diaz didn't want to believe us about Derek's transformation, about what we'd seen at the illegal campsite, about any of it. But Chief Marcus Webb overruled her, and 2 days before the new moon, we assembled the largest multi-agency operation the Everglades had seen in decades. National Park Service provided 6 rangers, including Tommy and me. FBI sent 3 agents, including Diaz. Miccosukee Tribal Police contributed 4 officers, all of whom had grown up in these wetlands and knew the old stories. And Elder Joseph Cypress came with 2 other medicine men, both elderly, both carrying bundles of sage and tobacco, and other things I was only beginning to understand. The briefing took place in the Flamingo Station conference room at 3 p.m. on the day of the new moon. Agent Diaz stood at the front with a tactical map of Turner River projected on the screen behind her. Our objective is observation and containment, she said. Intelligence suggests Derek Webb, Vanessa Ortiz, and Cole Brennan will attempt some kind of ritual at this location. She pointed to an abandoned Chickie platform deep in the Turner River area. Tonight, during the new moon, we establish surveillance positions at 6 p.m. before sunset. No one engages the suspects unless they pose immediate threat to themselves or others. We observe, we document, and when they complete whatever ritual they're planning, we move in for arrest. Questions? Tommy raised his hand. What's the fallback plan if things go wrong? If what we observe doesn't fit conventional law enforcement parameters? Officer Osceola, I don't know what you expect to see, but whatever it is, I can guarantee it has a rational explanation. We're dealing with 3 disturbed individuals engaged in cult activity, not supernatural entities. Ma'am, with respect, you're wrong. Marcus Webb's voice was quiet but firm. I've worked this park for 30 years. I raised my son in these wetlands, and I'm telling you that what Derek has gotten involved with is beyond anything in your FBI training manual. The protocols exist for a reason. We need to follow them. Elder Joseph spoke up from the back of the room, his English careful and deliberate. The new moon is when the barriers are thinnest, when the Marshwalker can cross over most easily. If Derek and his friends complete the summoning ceremony with 3 offerings, the entity will gain permanent access to this world. It will no longer be confined to the old places. It will be able to hunt freely, anywhere there's water, anywhere there's grief. Agent Diaz's expression was patient but condescending. Mr. Cypress, I appreciate your cultural perspective, but we need to focus on evidence-based tactics. Then focus on this evidence. Elder Joseph pulled out his phone, showed photos that Tommy had sent him. The transformation tracks. the webbed handprints on my windows, the symbols carved at Dr. Marsh's death scene. You can call it cult activity if that helps you sleep at night, but when you see what happens tonight, you'll understand that some things are older than your evidence-based world. We deployed at 5:30 p.m. while the sun was still above the horizon. 6 boats spread across a half-mile perimeter around the target Chicky. Each boat had night vision equipment, thermal imaging, radio communications, and weapons we all knew probably wouldn't help but carried anyway because it made us feel better. Tommy and I took position on the eastern approach, concealed behind a dense wall of mangroves about 200 yards from the Chicky. We could see the platform clearly through our binoculars, an old traditional structure that had been abandoned for at least a decade, its thatch roof partially collapsed, its support posts dark with age and water damage. "How are you feeling?" Tommy asked quietly as we settled in to wait. "Terrified. You?" "Same, but at least we're terrified together." He checked his radio, confirmed all units were in position. "Sarah, if this goes bad, if the protocols get violated and things fall apart, you need to get out. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to save everyone. Just get to safety and let Elder Joseph know what happened. I'm not leaving you. You might have to. You're the bloodline connection, the one with your grandmother's gift. You're more important to stopping this thing than the rest of us combined." The sun set at 6:42 p.m., and the darkness that followed was absolute. New moon meant no natural light, just stars that seemed impossibly distant and cold. We switched to night vision, the world turning into shades of green and black, the mangroves becoming walls of shadow, the water a dark mirror. At 9:15 p.m., thermal imaging picked up movement to the south. 3 figures approaching by airboat, the engine sound carrying across the water long before we could see them clearly. "All units, we have contact," Agent Diaz's voice came through the radio. 3 subjects approaching target location from the south. Maintain position and observe." Through night vision, I watched Derek, Vanessa, and Cole tie their airboat to the Chicky and climb onto the platform. They were carrying supplies, bags, and bundles that they set down carefully before beginning to arrange them in patterns I recognized from Dr. Marsh's research notes. Coral, crushed into fine powder, laid out in circles. Shells arranged in spirals at the cardinal points. Symbols carved into the Chicky's support posts. Fresh cuts that showed white against the weathered wood. "They're setting up the ritual," Tommy whispered, "just like at Marsh's place." At 11:47 p.m., they began to chant. The language wasn't English, wasn't Spanish. "Here, fall back to extraction points." The marsh walker raised one massive arm and pointed directly at our position. Then it spoke, and the voice was every victim it had ever taken speaking in unison, a chorus of the drowned and the lost. More offerings, more voices. "Feed me." The water around our boat erupted with movement. Things were rising from the depths, dozens of them, transformed beings that had once been human but weren't anymore. They moved through the water at impossible speed, creating no wake, no ripples, just gliding toward us like sharks that had learned to walk upright. "Start the engine!" Tommy shouted. "Go, go, go!" I yanked the outboard to life and opened the throttle, the aluminum boat leaping forward through the narrow channel. Behind us, the creatures gave chase, and they were fast, keeping pace with us even as we hit 25 miles per hour through channels barely wider than our boat. Through the radio, I could hear chaos on all frequencies. "Engine failure, requesting immediate extraction." "They're in the water with us." "Officer down, I repeat. Officer down." "This isn't possible. This can't be happening." Something grabbed the back of our boat, and I felt the whole vessel shudder. I looked back and saw a figure climbing onto the stern, pulling itself up with webbed hands that had too many fingers. Its face was obscured by Spanish moss, but when it spoke, the voice was unmistakable. "Sarah, I'm so cold. I've been waiting for you. Come into the water with me." Maya's voice coming from that thing's throat. Tommy didn't hesitate. He fired 3 rounds center mass, the muzzle flash blinding in the darkness. The creature fell backward into the water, but it didn't bleed, just black water streaming from the bullet holes. And seconds later, it was back, climbing onto the boat again, joined by 2 more. "It's not your sister," Tommy shouted at me. "That thing is just wearing her voice like a mask. Don't listen to it." I swerved hard to the right, trying to shake the creatures off the boat. One fell, but the others held on. The engine was screaming, pushed beyond its safe limits, and I could feel it starting to overheat. Then it died, just stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. Protocol 4. If your boat engine dies in the same location 3 times within a 24-hour period, abandon the vessel immediately. "How many times has the engine died?" I asked Tommy, already knowing the answer would be bad. "This is the 3rd time in this channel. We tried coming through here this morning for recon and the engine failed twice. Sarah, we have to abandon the boat. Right now." The radio was nothing but static, all frequencies jammed or dead. The creatures were surrounding us, maybe 20 of them, circling in the water like something out of a nightmare. And in the distance, through the mangroves, I could see the red eyes of the marsh walker watching, patient and hungry. We grabbed our essential gear, our radios even though depths directly beneath the Chickie, its massive form lifting the entire platform 2 feet higher. I fell backward, scrambling away from the edge as the entity pulled itself onto the structure, water cascading from its body in sheets. This close, in the green glow of bioluminescence, I could see it clearly for the first time. The Spanish moss and cypress bark that covered its body weren't decorative. They were part of it, growing from its flesh like hair or feathers. And beneath that vegetation, I could see pale skin, white as bone, stretched over a frame that was vaguely human, but fundamentally wrong in every proportion and angle. But the faces were the worst part. They weren't masks or illusions. They were actual human faces pressed against the entity's skin from underneath, like people trapped inside trying to push through a membrane. Their mouths moved constantly, forming words I couldn't hear but could somehow feel resonating in my chest. And there, on the entity's left shoulder, I saw Maya's face. Her eyes were open and aware, locked onto mine with desperate recognition. The marshwalker spoke, and its voice was 100 voices layered together. But Maya's was loudest. "Sarah, you came. I knew you would. I've been waiting for you, calling for you every night. It's so lonely in here, so cold and dark and lonely." "You're not Maya." I forced the words out, gripping my knife so hard my hand ached. "Maya's dead. You're just something using her voice." "Am I?" The entity tilted its massive head, water dripping from the moss that hung like hair. "Look at her face, Sarah. Look into her eyes. She's still here, still aware, still trapped inside me. She's been screaming for 2 months, begging to get out, begging for you to save her. But there's only one way to save her now." The entity reached out with one massive hand, fingers webbed and elongated, ending in nails that looked more like claws. "Join us. Give yourself to the water, to the deep places, to the cold darkness where grief can't reach you anymore. Become the 3rd offering. Complete the ceremony, and Maya can speak through you, can live again through your voice. can finally rest. She already rests, I said, but my voice shook. She died 2 months ago. You took her life. No, I took her voice. Her life continues inside me, Sarah. She tasted like salt water and regret, like lost opportunities and words left unsaid between sisters. Every memory she had of you is mine now. Every conversation you never finished, every fight you never resolved, every I love you that went unsaid. It's all here, preserved perfectly in the cold water. The entity leaned closer, and I could smell it now. The scent of deep water and decay, of things that lived in darkness and fed on grief. Maya's face pushed harder against the membrane of its skin, her mouth forming words. Sarah, please, I'm so tired. I want to rest, but I can't rest until you're here with me. We can be together again. We can talk forever in the quiet places between worlds. I thought about all the nights after Maya disappeared, when I'd lain awake wishing I could talk to her one more time. All the things I'd never told her. All the years I'd wasted in Seattle when I could have been here, working alongside her, being the sister she deserved instead of the one who ran away. The temptation was physical, a pull stronger than the one that had led me to this chickie. Every grief I'd ever felt, every loss, every regret, all of it could disappear if I just stepped into the water, if I just let the marshwalker take me, if I just surrendered to the promise of reunion. My hand moved toward the water. Then I remembered Elder Joseph's teachings, the boundary songs he'd taught me, the protection ceremonies, the way he'd explained how the marshwalker fed on grief and loss, used them as hooks to pull people deeper. And I remembered something else he'd said, something I hadn't fully understood at the time. The entity requires 3 offerings to maintain its door to this world, but the door can also be closed with 3 counter-offerings, if given in the right order, with the right words. I pulled my hand back from the water. No, I said, you're not Maya, and even if some part of her is trapped in you, surrendering myself won't free her. It'll just give you more power, more access to this world, more victims to hunt. The marshwalker's red eyes blazed brighter. Then she suffers. She remains trapped, aware, drowning forever in cold water that never ends. Is that what you want for your sister? I want her to rest, really rest, not this nightmare you've trapped her in. I stood up, my legs shaking, and pulled out the protection bundle Elder Joseph had given me. The cypress bead was warm against my palm, almost hot, and I'm going to give her that rest. The entity laughed, the sound echoing across the water. You're one person with a collection of herbs and stones. I am ancient. I am vast. I am the water itself. What can you possibly do against me? I can close the door. I opened the protection bundle with trembling fingers. Derek and his friends tried to open it wider with 3 offerings. Dr. Marsh was the first, willing or not. Maya was the second, taken by force. They wanted me to be the third, the bloodline offering, the final piece that would give you permanent access to this world. Yes, and now I'll take you anyway, willing or not. The ceremony will be complete. No, it won't, because I'm not giving you 3 offerings. I'm giving you 3 counter-offerings, 3 acts that close the door instead of opening it. I pulled tobacco from the bundle and scattered it onto the water in the 4 directions, speaking the words Elder Joseph had taught me, first in English, then in halting Mikosuke, that my grandmother's blood somehow helped me pronounce correctly. First offering, acknowledgement. I acknowledge you, Marshwalker. I acknowledge you existed before my people, before the Mikosuke, before the Calusa. before human beings walked on this land. I acknowledge you were here when all of South Florida was underwater, when the world was still forming from the sea. I acknowledge the water remembers you, carries your presence in every current and tide. The entity recoiled slightly, like the words caused it physical discomfort. Second offering, respect. I respect your power, your hunger, your ancient claim to the deep places and the dark water. I respect that you are part of this land's memory, part of its living consciousness. But I also claim the boundary. I claim the line between your world and ours, between the deep places and the shallow, between the drowned and the living. The bioluminescent water began to dim, the green glow fading to darker blue. Third offering, choice and blood. I pulled out my grandmother's knife, the one Elder Joseph had given me from her belongings, cypress wood handle and alligator tooth blade. My hands were steady now, certain. I drew the blade across my palm, deep enough to bleed freely, deep enough to hurt. My blood dripped into the water, mixing with the tobacco and sage, and I spoke the boundary song Elder Joseph had taught me, the one he said my grandmother had sung when she was young and still walking between worlds. The Miccosukee words came more easily now, flowing from my mouth like I'd spoken them all my life. My grandmother's blood, freely given. Evening, Heron's gift, accepted and claimed. The debt is paid not in feeding, but in balance. You are acknowledged, respected, and bound to the deep places. The door closes. The boundary holds. You are banished from the living world. The marshwalker screamed, and it wasn't Maya's voice anymore. It was all of them. Every victim it had ever taken, every voice it had stolen, all screaming at once in rage and pain, and something that might have been relief. The Spanish moss and cypress bark began to peel away from its body, sloughing off in huge sheets that fell into the water and dissolved. Underneath, I saw what the entity really was. Something vast and pale and utterly alien. Something that existed in dimensions my eyes couldn't properly process. It was like looking at a shape that had too many angles, too many surfaces, too many edges all existing in the same space. The faces trapped in its skin began to fade, dissolving like smoke. Maya's face was the last to go, and just before it disappeared completely, her eyes met mine, and her mouth formed two words. Thank you. Then light erupted from the water, blinding white phosphorescence that turned the darkness into artificial noon. The chicky platform shook, the support posts cracking, and I grabbed Emily Vasquez and pulled her away from the edge as the entire structure began to collapse. The marsh walker was coming apart, the entity's form fragmenting into pieces that turned to water, that turned to light, that simply ceased to exist in any way my brain could. Ranger who was lost, Maya Chen. She was your sister, wasn't she? Yes. I'm so sorry, but thank you for what you did. Thank you for bringing our daughter home. Maya's body was never recovered. We searched the Turner River area for weeks, diving teams and cadaver dogs and aerial surveys, but found nothing. Elder Joseph said this was common with the marshwalker's victims, that the entity consumed them so completely there was nothing physical left to find. But he performed a release ceremony anyway, on the small mangrove island where I'd destroyed the entity, where the chicky platform had collapsed and sunk into the water. 5 of us stood on that island at dawn. Elder Joseph, myself, and 4 tribal elders I'd been introduced to, but whose names I was still learning to pronounce correctly. We offered tobacco to the 4 directions. We sang the songs of release in Miccosukee, songs that Elder Joseph patiently taught me line by line, and we spoke Maya's name, the name she'd been given at birth, and the Miccosukee name her grandmother had given her in secret when she was a baby. Morning Heron, the daughter of Evening Heron, the girl who loved the water. Her spirit is free now, Elder Joseph said as we finished the ceremony, the sun climbing over the mangroves. She's not trapped anymore, not suffering. She walks the spirit paths with Evening Heron, learning the things she would have learned if she'd lived. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I'd cried so much in the first weeks after Maya's disappearance that I thought I had no tears left. Now I just felt empty and clean, like something toxic had been washed out of me, leaving space for something else to grow. Chief Marcus Webb retired from the Park Service 2 weeks after the incident. He came to my cabin to tell me personally, couldn't meet my eyes as he spoke. I should have believed the protocols, he said, his voice rough with shame and exhaustion. I should have taken the traditional knowledge seriously. I should have protected my son from himself, from Dr. Marsh, from all of it. Instead, I let my skepticism and my pride blind me to what was really happening. You couldn't have known. I could have listened to the Miccosukee officers who tried to warn me, to Elder Joseph when he said Derek was walking a dangerous path, to your sister when she came to me frightened and asking for help. He finally looked at me. Maya deserved better. You deserved better. The park deserved better. He shook my hand, pressing his Chief Ranger badge into my palm. They're offering you the position. Chief Ranger of Everglades National Park, youngest person to ever hold it. You should take it. You understand things about this place that I spent 30 years refusing to learn. I took the position. At 34 years old, I became Chief Ranger of one of America's largest and most dangerous national parks, responsible for 1.5 million acres of wetlands, 40 species of threatened or endangered wildlife, and things that didn't appear in any official park documentation. The promotion ceremony was unusual. Park Service officials came from Washington, presenting me with my new badge and credentials in a formal ceremony at the Flamingo Visitor Center. But the Miccosukee Tribal Council insisted on their own ceremony the next day, recognizing me as someone who walks between worlds, who carries Evening Heron's gift, who maintains the boundaries. Elder Joseph presented me with a new protection bundle, stronger than the first one, woven from materials I didn't fully recognize. You'll be learning the boundary songs for the rest of your life, he said. There are hundreds of them, each one maintaining a different aspect of the separation between worlds, each one passed down through generations of people who took this responsibility seriously. Your grandmother knew many of them. Now you will too. I visit the mangrove island every week, the place where Maya died and where I destroyed the marshwalker. I leave tobacco and sweetgrass. I sing the songs Elder Joseph teaches me, and I maintain the boundary. Sometimes I swear I can feel Maya there, not trapped, not suffering, just present, watching over the water. She loved. Tommy became my second in command, Deputy Chief Ranger, and the person I trust most to understand when we're dealing with something the protocols warn about versus conventional Park Service issues. He's teaching me Miccosukee language and customs. I'm teaching him administrative procedures and federal law enforcement protocols. Together, we're building something new. A Park Service that respects both modern science and traditional knowledge, that follows both evidence-based investigation and the wisdom of the protocols. I was finishing paperwork on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when the call came in. Dispatch, a new ranger I'd hired last month who was still learning the protocols, sounded uncertain. Chief Chen, we have a missing person report. Isabella Rodriguez, 19 years old, went kayaking alone in the backcountry 2 days ago, hasn't returned. But there's something weird about this case. Weird how? Her family keeps receiving calls from her cell phone. She whispers, "Help me," and then the line goes dead. And according to the cell tower data, the calls are coming from progressively deeper in the park. First call was near Flamingo. Second was from the Whitewater Bay area. Third was from the Turner River corridor. My hand went instinctively to the cypress bead around my neck, feeling its warmth. What phase is the moon? Waxing crescent. New moon is in 5 days. I looked at the protocols hanging on my office wall, the framed document I'd had moved from the station to my new headquarters. 7 rules that had seemed like superstition 3 months ago. 7 rules that had kept rangers alive for 40 years. Alert all backcountry patrols. Nobody goes into the Turner River area alone, and nobody enters after sunset. I want thermal.